1 year ago today, the derailment of a Norfolk Southern train carrying toxic chemicals scarred a small Ohio town. This drone video was released by the NTSB this week. The derailment resulted in fires, leaks in rail cars, and chemicals burned off to prevent an explosion. It happened in East Palestine, Ohio, and CBS's Roxana Saberi has the latest on how residents are doing.
1 year after the train derailed 3 miles from Linda and Russ Murphy's farm, they believe their well water is still contaminated with chemicals.
Did you drink any of this after the train derailment?
No.
You just don't trust it?
No.
The Murphys still use the water for cleaning. They say that could be one reason they've developed strange symptoms.
You've had diarrhea every day since just after the derailment?
Yes. And my doctor, he's told me that they basically nuked your town.
I'll constantly rub my eyes because it looks like there's a haze.
Months after the disaster, a CDC survey found hundreds of residents still reporting symptoms consistent with the health effects of the substances released.
Is there still a lot of heavily concentrated contamination here?
Not here.
The Environmental Protection Agency's Mark Durno and his team have been overseeing Norfolk Southern's cleanup operation and says sampling indicates there's no danger to the community for now.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms?
That's a hard question to answer, but we also recognize that it's a question that needs to be addressed.
We are working with the village to focus on what's needed there.
Will Hardin is a senior director at Norfolk Southern.
If East Palestine becomes a cancer cluster, what would Norfolk Southern do? Will it still be there to help?
From a long-term health standpoint, we are addressing that with the state and local authorities.
So is it an option that's on the table?
It is an option that is on the table.
Some residents say they feel just fine and want to move on.
We're getting the word out that, we feel like it's safe for people to come here.
But others, like the Murphys, say it's too soon.
There's carcinogens that have been released that are in our waterways that we breathed in the air. I think we're all going to be statistics. And that's fine if it helps somebody else out, but what a shame. What a shame to be part of this research we didn't sign up for.
And they say they'll keep pushing for answers. Roxana Saberi, CBS News, East Palestine, Ohio.
We begin with a look at a threat facing firefighters nationwide. San Francisco could soon become the first city in the U.S. to ban firefighting gear made with so-called forever chemicals, suspected carcinogens known as PFAS. In tonight's Eye on America, Mark Strassman reports from Ohio, where many firefighters worry more about their gear and foam than about smoke and flames.
In small-town Bellbrook, Ohio, firefighter Jay Leach feels burned.
Most firefighters that got in this job knew it's an inherited risk, but we never knew that the gear and the equipment that we're using is killing us.
Inside Fire Station 22, Lieutenant Leach helped remove buckets of firefighting foam. It's called AFFF, undeniably effective, but laced with PFAS, so-called forever chemicals now linked to various cancers, especially among firefighters.
Cancer caused 72% of active duty firefighter deaths last year, according to the International Association of Firefighters. A separate study showed smoke inhalation causes 4% of active duty firefighter deaths.
A safer foam now exists, and 21 states have introduced policies that limit the use of AFFF firefighting foam. But for Jay Leach, cancer's heartache has no limits.
You said you wanted to show me something.
I do. I keep my wife with me and my helmet. There's a picture of her in there.
Oh, yeah. So you wear that whenever you go on a call.
Mm-hmm.
His wife, Tracy, was a firefighter for 25 years. Her diagnosis in 2017, breast cancer, despite no family history of cancer.
It pretty much ravaged her body. And then December of 2022, she was diagnosed terminally. And 2 weeks later, on Christmas Eve, she passed away.
You can't conclusively prove it.
Correct.
But in your gut.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly believe that PFAS caused my wife's cancer.
In a statement, the American Chemistry Council, an industry group, said it supports limits on using AFFF, adding all PFAS are not the same. It is not scientifically accurate or appropriate to group them together when considering safety risks. But for Jay Leach, this moment was cathartic, dropping off buckets of AFFF for destruction. Tens of thousands of gallons of it sit in fire stations across America. Ohio is the first state committed to destroying all of it. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine.
This gives us an alternative.
Sitting there, which does nobody any good.
Does no one any good. You know, it might leak out. You know, there's a danger whenever you have a product like that.
Another worry. PFAS have been inside firefighting gear for decades. PFAS help repel water and contaminants, but put on this gear and you're wrapping yourself inside suspected carcinogens.
We sweat, our pores open up, and the forever chemicals can go in our body.
19 years into this job, are you more scared of fires or are you more scared of cancer?
Cancer, absolutely. I love the job, but at the end of the day, I sit and think, is it worth it?
They realize the irony, scared of what's supposed to protect them. For Eye on America, Mark Strassman, Bellbrook, Ohio.
What a story.
On this Earth Day, we look at how one corner of the planet was contaminated with dangerous chemicals. Nuclear waste from the Manhattan Project in the 1940s wound up in a waterway that snakes through St. Louis. In tonight's Eye on America, Skylar Henry talks with a resident who believes years later that waste gave her loved ones cancer.
When did you start to notice people starting to get sick?
It was a slow, insidious process.
When Linda Maurice and her family first moved to St. Louis in 1957, they had no idea they had anything to fear.
I first knew there was some problem when my mother died. Her brother, who was a physician, took me aside and said, "Linda, I don't believe St. Louis is a very healthy place to live. Everyone on the street has a tumor."
The neighborhood was bordered by Coldwater Creek, a 19-mile tributary of the Missouri River. It wound through their backyards, near baseball fields, schools, and cemeteries, and past lots where leaking barrels and open-air dumps of nuclear waste leached into its waters.
It was shocking that this creek was likely making people sick.
Starting in 1942, roughly 1 ton of pure uranium was produced per day in downtown St. Louis. It was then shipped to labs across the country for the top-secret Manhattan Project, which created the first nuclear bomb. The leftover waste was dumped around the city.
That material was in 82 different spots throughout St. Louis County. Spilled, children played in it. It seemed to me that there wasn't an attempt to absolutely get to the bottom of it.
In Maurice's family alone, her mother, father, and brother died of cancer, leaving her to think differently about her childhood.
All that time, all those fun things were happening, but that whole time, we and the rest of the community were being exposed to some pretty dangerous stuff.
Now, her husband, who also lived in the area, is fighting cancer.
Clearly, there's something unusual about those cases.
He's being treated by urologic oncologist Dr. Gautam Agarwal. For the last several years, Dr. Agarwal has been tracking which of his patients lived near Coldwater Creek.
At what point did you say, oh, no, wait, we need to start keeping tabs of this?
I was seeing patients who were young, who had developed pretty significant cancers from areas that there's been some contamination with nuclear waste.
While radiation is known to cause cancer, experts say they can't pin down the specific cause of the disease in a given patient. But a 2019 study from the Department of Health and Human Services found that people who lived and played near Coldwater Creek from the 1960s to 1990s could have increased the risk of developing lung cancer, bone cancer, or leukemia.
The people there deserve for us to look at this much closer than we have.
People like Kristen Camuso, who grew up near Coldwater Creek.
I had to have a total hysterectomy. I've been diagnosed with thyroid cancer. They found a new tumor on my remaining adrenal gland. I promised myself that I was going to get better and do something about it.
It's a promise she's keeping. As we'll explain tomorrow, Kristen Camuso is determined neither to forget history nor have the people here relive it. For Eye on America, I'm Skyler Henry in St. Louis.
Tonight, we conclude a two-part Eye on America. And don't worry if you missed part one, we'll catch you up here. The story began with the development of the first nuclear bomb in the 1940s. Waste from that project became a ticking time bomb in the St. Louis area. Well, now one woman is on a mission to see that it's cleaned up. Here again is Skyler Henry.
Just 15 miles away from St. Louis's Gateway Arch, nuclear waste was stored for decades.
It was all top secret.
Linda Maurice lived near Coldwater Creek for 18 years. The waterway ran right by the storage site.
There was a deposit site where the processes and wastes of the Manhattan Project had been stored, that is to say, dumped in the open or put in barrels that rusted.
Eventually, Linda's mother, father, and brother would all die of lymphoma.
I think there are people to this day who don't know the story.
It wasn't until 1989, 43 years after the waste was first dumped, that the Environmental Protection Agency classified the area as hazardous. They said it was dangerously contaminated and ordered a government cleanup. But by that time, more than 60,000 people lived within just 1 mile of the creek, including Kristen Camuso.
I had to have a total hysterectomy. I've been diagnosed with thyroid cancer. They found a new tumor on my remaining adrenal gland.
Camuso is the policy director for the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. She's been pushing for the remaining waste to be removed for more than 12 years.
I was quite literally laying in my hospital bed, and I promised myself that I was going to get better and do something about it.
The Army Corps of Engineers has been in charge of the cleanup since 1997. An early project manager estimated it would take at least 8 years to finish. But now their best estimate is 2038.
There is a low-level radioactive material there, and we're going to remove it. It doesn't matter it's low or high, we're going to remove it.
Colonel Andy Paneer leads the St. Louis site.
It's small pockets at random locations along the creek that had been moved and deposited over time.
But the Corps' own maps show some of those pockets of waste are near schools, cemeteries, and under people's homes.
St. Louisans are being chronically exposed to this every day of their lives.
Last year, Camuso and the Washington University Environmental Law Clinic analyzed the Corps' cleanup plans. Not only are they concerned about the slow pace, they say the Corps is leaving behind nearly 3 times more radioactive isotopes than the Department of Energy said is safe.
What they're finding is mostly thorium-230, and that is an alpha emitter.
What does that mean?
So basically it becomes dangerous when you inhale or ingest it, and once it's in your body it will continue to fire for the rest of your life.
The Corps told us their cleanup plans are safe, but the Environmental Protection Agency wasn't convinced. CBS News found that in 2020, EPA scientists asked the Corps for specific data on the contamination, but the Corps did not respond to those requests.
Everybody has been touched by this legacy, and I feel it's a responsibility of mine. Now that I know this information, I can't just sit on it.
The Corps has promised an update on the contamination in 4 months, when it's set to publish its latest 5-year review. But while the people here wait for the threat to be dealt with, the creek continues to flow. For Eye on America, I'm Skyler Henry in St. Louis.
A pipeline that carries jet fuel sprung a leak, and the fuel wound up in drinking water in Pennsylvania. Dozens of wells in Bucks County were contaminated. What happened next is tonight's Eye on America, reported by Jim Axelrod.
This house was everything Christine Wanovich wanted when she and her husband bought it 20 years ago. That is until one day in September of 2023 when she turned on her kitchen faucet.
And it tasted weird and smelled like oil.
It must have been so odd.
It was very disconcerting.
Wanovich called Sunoco Pipeline, which operates the Twin Oaks pipeline that runs just across the street and carries jet fuel underground from a fuel terminal outside Philadelphia to Newark Terminal near the airport. Sunoco tested her water.
We're so happy to tell you there's no oil, no gas, no propane, nothing in your water. And I said, like, what is it then, right? Like, he said he didn't know. It's probably some kind of bacteria.
But it's not on us. It's not on
Exactly.
Sunoco.
It's not on them.
But other neighbors made similar complaints until finally, 16 months after Wanovich made her first call, and only after the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection investigated, Sunoco did find a leak in the pipeline.
I feel like we're being poisoned every day.
The people here don't use water piped in from some reservoir far away. Instead, for their cooking and drinking, they use on-property wells that draw from aquifers underground. When the Wanovich's well was finally opened earlier this year, Christine was shocked at the amount of jet fuel on top.
It was 15 gallons.
There's 15 gallons of jet fuel sitting on top of your well.
Yeah. And it's been gathering there since September 2023.
Sunoco removed that fuel, but Wanovich says Sunoco still sends workers each day to skim off new fuel seeping into her well.
I noticed immediately that there was a problem in my water.
The number of wells impacted is now at least 38.
A pipeline company that's more aggressive in follow-up would have identified it sooner.
Robert Hall spent decades regulating pipeline safety for the federal government. We asked him about the findings of the CBS News data team that Sunoco spilled more fuel in the United States than any other pipeline operator in 2024. What do you make of that data?
They are not one of the best pipeline companies with regard to their management of their pipeline.
In a statement, Sunoco's partner company, Energy Transfer, said it has installed water filtration systems for residents at no cost and is committed to the cleanup and restoration of the neighborhood, but did not address why it took so long to find the leak.
Come on, puppy, come on.
As for Christine Wanovich, she is suing Sunoco, and with the pipeline back in operation, she doesn't plan to stick around.
Would you stay if there was 12 feet of jet fuel found on your well? Well, we feel unsafe.
Given her experience, that's understandable. For Eye on America, I'm Jim Axelrod in Washington Crossing, Pennsylvania.
Now something and someone, chances are you've never heard of. The something is PFAS, chemicals that don't break down. The someone is Amara Strandi, a woman who never gave up. She believed PFAS cost her her life and spent the time she had left trying to save others. Mark Strassman has her story in tonight's Eye on America.
The House will come to order.
Minnesotans call it Amara's Law, named for Amara Strandi. And starting this year, it's America's strictest state law policing PFAS, chemical compounds found in everyday products such as nonstick cookware and cosmetics, and linked to childhood cancers and other health issues.
It's in products, it's in humans, it's in animals, it's in air, it's in water, it's in fish.
Katrina Kessler heads Minnesota's Pollution Control Agency.
We all need to think about exposure to PFAS and also ways to mitigate PFAS.
Here's how Strandi helped expose Minnesota's PFAS problem.
2022 was the year my cancer became unstoppable.
She was 20 and dying of liver cancer when she testified before lawmakers.
PFAS have created a public health crisis that has plagued my community for nearly 60 years.
Minnesota's new law will reduce, then eliminate, the manufacture and sale of non-essential PFAS products by 2032. 3M, a multinational corporation headquartered near Minneapolis, developed PFAS and manufactured them for decades. According to the state, PFAS waste discarded into landfills leached into local groundwater.
Don't drink the 3M cancer water became the running joke at my high school.
There's no definitive proof PFAS caused Amara's cancer, but she was convinced and inspired lawmakers to act.
In a word, Amara.
She had a drive like nobody else I know.
She was always on the side of the underdog.
Tenacity and empathy, that's a formidable 1-2 punch for doing good.
Yep. Absolutely.
Michael and Nora Strandi, Amara's father and sister, showed us photos of her 2 fights, getting well and doing good.
She wasn't interested in being an adversary. She was interested in being a partner in solving the issue.
I was exposed to these harmful chemicals through no fault of my own. And as a result, I will die with this cancer.
3M told us it supports regulations based on the best available science and established regulatory practices. The company will stop producing PFAS by the end of this year and agreed to pay the state $850 million for a PFAS cleanup. And now Minnesota has a PFAS law because a dying woman told her story so well.
One person can make a difference. You just have to have the willingness to fight the good fight.
Amara Strandy died 5 weeks before the bill became law. For Eye in America, I'm Mark Strassman in Oakdale, Minnesota.